Hi, I'm Kane. My sister signed me up for a singing performance, not out of love, but to embarrass me. She called it a harmless prank. She told everyone I'd get scared and bail. But I didn't. I stood there, dead microphone. The crowd laughing a meme video of me on every phone, and I still sang. She thought she set me up for failure. She didn't realize she built me a stage. Before I begin, tell me, have you ever been someone's joke and turned it into your strength? Leave a comment. I'm listening. The moment I stepped through the double doors of Green Hollow High, I felt the chill. Not from the weather, but from the way the hallway seemed to shrink as I entered. I kept my eyes down, clutching my backpack straps tighter than usual. The linoleum floor tiles were worn and familiar. They never looked back at me the way the other students did. Everyone seemed to be buzzing about something. Posters were plastered everywhere, so bright and enthusiastic they made me cringe, covering every wall. The end-of-year talent show. Sign up by Friday. Someone had even drawn a star around the word show, as if we were on Broadway and not stuck in a gym with broken folding chairs. I didn't give it much thought. Why would I hadn't signed up for anything. So I was stunned when a girl I barely knew walked past and muttered with a smirk, "Can't wait for your big moment, cave girl." I blinked. Cave girl. I followed the murmuring to the auditorium bulletin board, where the sign-up sheet was taped. Students clustered around, giggling, nudging each other. As the crowd thinned, I stepped forward. There it was. Kaylin Godsey's solo performance last act. I don't even remember breathing for the next few seconds. My stomach dropped 2 floors. A few students giggled behind me, and then she appeared, Callista, leaning casually against the wall, arms crossed, flanked by her 2 glittering friends. She met my gaze and offered a warm, almost gentle smile. "You're welcome," she said sweetly. "Everyone deserves their moment, right?" Her voice was sugar, but I could hear the sneer beneath it. She didn't have to roll her eyes or nudge anyone. Her smile did all the work. I stood there motionless, my fingers trembling slightly at my sides. For a fleeting second, I thought about grabbing a pen and crossing my name off the list, but I didn't move. Behind me, someone whispered, finally crawling out of her cave. Huh. Laughter not loud, but enough to prick my back like a sharp pin. I turned away before my face betrayed me. That afternoon, I spent the rest of the day barely speaking. I kept to myself, careful observing. At home, the dinner table was already set when I arrived. Mom was dishing out overcooked green beans. Callista had gotten home earlier, showered and radiant from practice. She recounted a funny incident at school, something about a soda can exploding on a teacher. Mom laughed like it was the best thing she'd heard all month. I sat at the end of the table. Not once did anyone ask about my day, and I didn't bring up the list. No one would listen long enough to care anyway. Callista's voice filled the kitchen like background music. Her perfect GPA, her team-winning regionals, her prom committee campaign. Mom refilled her glass without ever looking my way. And Dad, he hadn't been home in a while. His absence was the only thing in this house everyone politely ignored, like the crack running down the living room wall. After dinner, I quietly loaded the dishwasher while Callista retreated to her room. Mom went to grade papers. I climbed the stairs, my heart beating faster than it should for a girl who hadn't said a word at dinner. In my bedroom, the light was soft, the bedsheets slightly rumpled. My songbook lay on my desk, open to a blank page. I sat down, picked up a pen and wrote, "She did it to embarrass me." I stared at the words for a long time, not because I didn't believe them. I did. I just wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I closed the book and lay on my back, hands clasped over my stomach, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan turning silently above me. Everything in this house seemed to revolve. The conversations, the attention, the affection, but none of it ever touched me. And now I was about to be the last act on a stage I never wanted to step onto. I hadn't signed up to sing, but somehow everyone was expecting me to fail. That thought clung to me the next morning as I walked into school, 15 minutes earlier than usual. The hallways were mostly empty, just a few custodians cleaning a couple of teachers, chatting near the staff room, and the hum of the vending machines louder than usual. I didn't have much hope, only that they'd taken down the list. Maybe someone realized it was a mistake or a prank. Maybe it never happened. But as I walked into my morning class, hope deflated faster than a kicked ball. On every desk was the official program for the end-of-year showcase, glossy boldly printed with the school logo on the front, the event title in a fancy script. Someone had even added glitter pens to some of the covers. I quietly sat down. Before I could even grab one, a girl at the back of the class, Taylor, always loud, always noticing, flipped one open, scanned a page, and then snickered. "You're brave, Kaylin. It takes guts to do comedy. You know it's comedy, right?" I didn't answer. She tossed the booklet onto my desk with an indifferent flick of her wrist. The moment I saw my name, or rather what was supposed to be my name, a coldness spread through my chest. Kay Goofy Solo Scarbo. Goofy, not Godsey, not even close. And Scarbo. They hadn't just misspelled the song, they'd twisted it into a bad joke. Next to the title, someone had drawn a small caricature. A chicken holding a microphone with big bulging eyes and little music notes above its head, as if I was some farm animal stumbling onto the stage for amusement. I couldn't hear what anyone else was saying around me. The noise faded as if someone had turned down the volume on everything but my heartbeat. Don't react. Don't let them know they got to you. I folded the paper slowly, carefully, as if it was something fragile. I slipped it into the front pocket of my backpack. No rush, no flinch, just slow and deliberate. Missy. Dunley. Our homeroom teacher walked in with her. Coffee glanced at me for a second, then at the class. She saw the program in my hand. She saw the smirks. She said nothing. A boy across the room, Elijah, I think, spoke up. "This is a bit much." "Mitzi." Dunley didn't even look up. She just shrugged and said, "It's just a prank. Don't take things so seriously." It was then I realized it wasn't just Callista or a few students. Even the adults saw me as something disposable, a punchline. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I didn't speak unless called on. I didn't eat lunch. I didn't check my phone. When the final bell rang, I waited until the hallways were almost empty before stepping out. The air smelled of wet concrete and spring pollen. I walked the long way home, cutting through the residential area behind the school, just to avoid seeing anyone. When I stepped into our living room, it was a chaotic scene. Callista was in the middle, twirling in a sequined dress. Her friends lounged on the couch, cheering like confetti. "This is epic," one said, snapping a photo with her phone. Totally star material. I tried to slide past unnoticed, but the moment I reached the stairs, I heard someone whisper, "Hey, isn't that the girl from the program?" Another voice, high-pitched, teasing, cut in. "Yeah, the famous chicken girl." Laughter. Callista didn't stop them. She didn't defend me. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. Instead, she said in the sing-song voice she used when she wanted to sound magnanimous, "Maybe it's her time to shine even if she burns out." I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I just climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. In my room, the light had faded. I didn't turn on the lamp. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled the program from my backpack. The paper was still smooth, unripped, uncreased. On the bottom corner of the back, I took a black pen and wrote 5 words in all caps. "You fired the first shot." I folded it this time sharper. Not gently, not softly, as if I was forging it into something else. Something dangerous, something undeniable. That piece of paper wasn't a joke anymore. It was evidence. I wasn't angry that they laughed. I was angry that they thought I wouldn't do anything. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and packed my songbook in my backpack first. I didn't look in the mirror when I left the house. Not to look good. Not to impress. I just needed to know. I needed to see for myself if my name still meant anything in that auditorium. The rehearsal schedule was taped to the door near the band room. I took the side entrance to school before most students arrived, the linoleum floors still echoing with the sounds of early morning cleaning. In my hand was my songbook, its edges frayed, the pages soft from years of opening and closing. It was the only thing I'd inherited from my mother before she passed. I approached the bulletin board with a cautious bit of hope, though by now even hope felt like a betrayal of reason. And there it was. My name was still at the bottom of the list, but the title had changed. Last Quartet Pop Medley, featuring Callista Shiloh, Brantley Eva. I stared, my heart sinking in tiny increments. No more Scarborough, no more solo, no more me. I walked into the auditorium slowly, my sneakers squeaking on the polished wood floor. A few students were already there, chatting casually, while the stage manager flipped through papers on a clipboard. I cleared my throat and walked over. "Excuse me," I said softly, pointing to the board. "I think there's a mistake. I didn't agree to change my song." She looked up, gave a slight shrug. "Oh, they said you did. Group act will end stronger, right?" My throat tightened. I managed to say I didn't change it. She blinked, then nodded towards the stage where Callista was leaning against the piano, flipping her hair, laughing with Shiloh. "Maybe you should ask your sister." She brought in the new song, and that was the end of the conversation. I didn't move for several seconds. I just stood there staring at the stage, at the people who had taken what was mine again and turned it into something else. Something shinier, louder, flashier. Callista caught my eye from across the room, but she didn't stop smiling. She didn't wave. She didn't blink. Just a tilt of her head as if I wasn't even there. I didn't confront her. I turned and walked away. The hallways were colder now, the air sharper. I kept going until I reached the bleachers behind the practice field. From there, I could still hear the music, starting from inside, the bass thumping, the voices blending. The same song my song, but it wasn't quiet now. It wasn't haunting or delicate like I'd imagined. It was layered with synthesized beats, echoing claps and glittering harmonies. My favorite line, my mother's favorite line. Now belted out by Brantley with an over-the-top flourish, even though he couldn't hit a note last month. The words sounded different now. Plastic ridiculed, rewritten. I pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to breathe through the ache building behind my eyes. I didn't cry. I couldn't. If I started, I might never stop. Instead, I opened my songbook. My hand trembled slightly as I flipped to the next blank page. And in the empty space below the last entry, I wrote, "If they won't let me sing, I'll say it so loud it sounds like a song." It wasn't defiance. Not yet, but it wasn't surrender either. When I got home, the house smelled of reheated takeout. Dad wasn't there. He was rarely home lately, always working overtime or on a 2-hour gas run. My mum's old cassette tapes were still neatly stacked next to the stereo. I reached for the one with the faded label Lullabies for Kay. I didn't eat dinner. Didn't say a word to Callista, who was in the living room, FaceTiming someone about nail polish swatches and how glitter gave off finale energy. I closed my bedroom door. I taped the lyric sheet I'd written weeks ago, my original arrangement, to the inside of my closet door. Then I turned on the old stereo, rewound the cassette, and let my mother's voice hum through the static. She always sounded softer on tape. I sat by the door, knees pulled up, songbook open on my lap, and for the first time in days I whispered loudly to no one, "Whatever they do, I'm still going to sing." The next morning, I walked into the music wing, the building still smelling of old carpet and pencil shavings. I walked past the trophy case, past the rows of faded stage posters, and stopped outside the choir room door. I hadn't planned on saying anything, but after what they'd done, after hearing my lyrics distorted into a glittery joke, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't care. Ndi? Carver was already inside, setting down her coffee and flipping through a morning practice schedule. She didn't look up when I walked in. I stood there for several seconds before I spoke. Mrs. Carver, can I ask you something? She looked over her glasses as if I'd interrupted an opera. I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice from trembling. I didn't sign up for the end-of-year show. Someone put my name down, and now the song I was going to do has been replaced without anyone asking me. She blinked slowly, then sighed as she reached for a pen. Callan, this is for building confidence. That's what these showcases are for. You should be grateful they let you participate. My fingers tightened in my palms. I nodded stiffly, biting down on the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. Okay, I mumbled. It's not okay, but I knew from her voice it didn't matter. I backed away towards the door, then stopped. I want to practice a different song, I said. My own. Can I book the microphone? She exhaled, half laughing. You won't need a microphone, sweetie. This isn't Carnegie Hall. Behind me, a few students giggled. A boy in the back of the room mimicked flapping his arms, pretending to hold a mic and clucking. Goofy's got pipes, he laughed. I didn't turn around. I just walked out my sneakers, sticking slightly to the polished floor. The laughter followed me down the hallway like gum stuck to the bottom of my shoe. I didn't go to class right away. Instead, I sat by the upright piano that had been pushed into the main hallway years ago. One key was permanently stuck. The paint was peeling. I rested my fingers on the ivory keys, but I didn't play. I just sat there letting the hallway buzz around me. A janitor walked by, pushing his cart, and for a moment he paused. He said nothing, didn't mock me, just gave a slight nod as if I belonged there. It was enough to keep me in one piece. That evening I skipped dinner again. No one asked why. Callista was busy posing in her new outfit in front of the full-length mirror in the living room. Dad was on an hours-long conference call. His voice, agreeing to things he'd never follow through on, echoed through the house. I closed my door and opened my songbook. The folded schedule. The promotional flyer with my misspelled name and the chicken caricature lay in a pile next to my desk lamp. I wrote only one line. They took away my sound, so I'll give them the truth. The next morning I carried my songbook and my mum's old hoodie, the one from that night years ago. It still smelled faintly of cinnamon and lavender detergent. I wore it under my jacket. It was like armor, soft but unbreakable. I didn't know what practice would bring. I didn't care. I wasn't walking in to fight anymore. I was walking in to remember that I didn't need their approval to belong, to remember that my song didn't start with them and it wouldn't end with them. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to sing. I didn't need their permission to sing a song that was already mine. The next morning, the air still smelled of wet leaves and old bark from the night's rain. I pulled my faded blue hoodie. My mum's halfway zipped and clutched my songbook to my chest, as if it could anchor me to something real. The school was quieter than usual, or maybe it was just me inside my head where things had suddenly become strangely still. I arrived early for the dress rehearsal, early enough to hear the stage crew still taping down wires and adjusting lights. I wasn't on the main list anymore, but someone, maybe a student, director, maybe someone trying to be fair, had scrawled my name at the very end almost as an afterthought. I didn't mind. The last part would be quiet. Maybe they'd all be gone by then. As I waited backstage, the assistant stage manager handed me a small wireless microphone. She looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting around. It might be a little glitchy, she mumbled. I nodded, taking it gently. Thanks. She didn't meet my eyes. I said nothing more. Asked nothing. I wasn't there to beg for functionality. They called my name, or rather, Callan G. The lights dimmed. A murmur, or rather a rustle, went through the auditorium. I walked forward, songbook in one hand, mic in the other, took a breath and hissed. The microphone emitted a piercing feedback squeal and died. Just static silence. I looked toward the booth. The AV guy gave a half-hearted wave and a shrug. He didn't even stand up. Giggles rippled from somewhere near the third row. Then buck, buck, buck. Someone clucked like a chicken. Softly at first, then spreading. The mocking laughter washed over me in waves, hitting my chest hard, but I didn't move. Not yet. Then the screen behind me lit up. It was me. Footage I didn't even know existed. Someone had filmed me in the hallway a few days ago, sitting on the bleachers humming to myself. No mic, just singing softly. They'd layered it with clucking sounds and animated chickens, bobbing their heads to the beat. The words "brave chicken coming to a coop near you" flashed in sparkly Comic Sans font. The whole auditorium erupted in laughter. I froze. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't flinch. I walked to the edge of the stage, slowly, deliberately, and gently placed the dead microphone on the floor as if it were made of glass. Then, with no lights, no music track, no backing, I sang, "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" My voice was shaky, almost inaudible, but it was real, raw, unfiltered. For a moment the laughter died down. Someone even shushed their neighbour. But then ding, the bell rang. The spell broke. Chairs scraped back. The crowd dispersed, talking loudly, laughing again. I walked off stage as if nothing had happened. Didn't look back. In the hallway, no one stopped me. No one whispered an apology, not even silence, just absence. I slipped into the bathroom, locked a stall and looked in the mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were steady. They wanted a joke, a breakdown, a spectacle. They wanted a show. Fine. I pulled my songbook from my bag and flipped to a blank page. In the middle I wrote, "No spotlight needed, just the truth." I underlined it once, then again. That night my mum waited for me at the kitchen table. I saw the worry in her eyes. Her mouth was slightly open as if to ask, "Are you okay?" But instead she asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" I stood in the doorway, still in my hoodie, the sleeves a little damp. "Don't worry, Mom," I said softly. "I've decided what I'm going to do." My voice didn't tremble. It wasn't high. It was calm, quiet, but something inside had broken and rebuilt. They didn't know it yet, but they'd just lit the wrong fuse. The next morning at 7:30 a.m., the auditorium was still dark, the air damp from the early morning mist seeping through the stage doors. I walked in carrying nothing flashy, just my songbook, an old Walkman, and a self-recorded CD in a thin plastic case. The hoodie I wore had frayed cuffs and a faint soup stain from when my mum laughed too hard. Stirring a pot, but it felt like armor. A substitute AV technician was setting up. 30s, scruffy beard, no nonsense. His name tag read Miles. I walked straight up to him. "I don't need a mic," I said, "but I want to do a clean sound check." He raised an eyebrow, gave a single nod. "Got it. You've got 5 minutes before the band gets here." I handed him the CD. Track 1, just ambient background. No vocals. He popped it in, adjusted a few levels, and pressed play. The speakers whispered with soft wind, distant seagulls, then a gentle piano like drops of water dancing on keys. I stood center stage, the room still empty, the lights low. I started to sing, not loud, not to perform, just to say the words I needed to hear. My voice didn't waver. When I finished, I heard Miles mumble from the booth, "You're good." It was enough. While I walked backstage to pack up, something began to stir far from the stage. In the library media room, a senior named Leniani, who'd quietly observed everything all week, hit upload on a short video titled "What They Cut, the Real Voice." It was raw footage, shot without my knowledge. Just me tucked behind the chairs, humming Scarborough Fair softly. No chicken clucks, no memes, no clown effects, just me. Small and unpolished but real. Within the hour it went viral. Kids watched it in morning classes, during lunch, in bathrooms between periods. I didn't know any of this yet, but I felt it. Because when I walked through the science wing after third period, the laughter wasn't echoing anymore. The sideways glances weren't malicious. Someone even moved out of my way. A boy I didn't know gave a slight nod. Hands in his hoodie pockets, and then at my locker, a girl from Callista's crowd walked up. I saw the real video, she said, her voice low. I'm sorry for laughing earlier. It wasn't fair. I blinked. Thanks, I whispered, for listening. That was all. I didn't smile, but something in me settled like a knot beginning to unravel. The whispers spread. Even the people who didn't like me didn't know what to do with me anymore, because now I wasn't the joke. I was the playback. And Callista, she knew it. Around 2:15 outside the cafeteria, we crossed paths. She leaned against the lockers, arms crossed. Her voice still had that glossy layer of sugar she used when she wanted to be in control. You should thank me, she said, flipping her hair like a punctuation mark. I mean, famous is famous, right? I looked at her for a moment, then said softly, You taught me how to stand still when people try to make you fall. My voice wasn't sharp, wasn't bitter, just clear. Callista blinked. Her smile faltered as if she wasn't sure if I'd complimented her or challenged her. I didn't wait for her to reply. I walked past, shoulders straight, songbook tucked under my arm, and for the first time all day I felt like the floor wasn't trying to swallow me whole. That afternoon I stayed late at school, not for practice, but because I needed the space. The choir room was empty, the light from the high windows casting shimmering dust motes. I sat by the old piano, not touching the keys, just resting my hands on the chipped wood. I opened my songbook and wrote, They thought they took my voice, but they only made it louder. I wasn't sure I fully believed that, but writing it down made it feel truer. When I left, the hallways were quiet, just the hum of the air conditioning. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to see the video Lainey posted. I had felt the shift like the air before a storm, when everything becomes sharp and still. The night of the show arrived sooner than I expected. The auditorium was bright with stage lights, the scent of cheap perfume and floor cleaner mixing in the air. The seats were full, the murmur of parents, students, and teachers blending into a wave. I stood backstage, no sequined dress, no glittery makeup. Just my mom's hoodie jeans and old sneakers. My songbook was in my back pocket, the corner of the paper peeking out like a reminder. I didn't have a microphone. I'd told Miles I didn't want one, not because I was afraid it would break again, but because I wanted my voice to stand on its own. Unfiltered, unamplified, just me. Callista and her group performed before me, my song now theirs with electronic beats and flashing lights. The crowd applauded, a few standing. She brushed past me as she walked off, sweat glittering on her forehead, her smile radiant. Good luck, little sister, she said, her voice sweet but sharp like a knife. I didn't answer. I just gave a slight nod and walked out onto the stage when they called my name. Calin Godsey, Solo Scarborough Fair. The lights were blinding, but I didn't squint. I stood center stage, hands empty, breath steady. The crowd was silent, but I could feel the anticipation, the curiosity, and the smirks waiting for me to stumble. I took a breath deep and began, Are you going to Scarborough Fair? My voice was small, not powerful, but clear, like my mother's used to be in our tiny kitchen. No background music, no effects, just me and the words that had lived inside me for so long. The first row was silent. Then the second. I didn't look at anyone, didn't search for Callista or my mum in the crowd. I just sang each note. A stone laid down, building something no one could take away. When I finished, there was no immediate applause. There was a pause as if the auditorium was holding its breath with me. Then, from somewhere in the back, a ripple of clapping began slowly, then spreading. Not thunderous, not wild, but enough. I didn't bow. I didn't smile. I just walked off stage, my sneakers squeaking on the wood floor, and disappeared behind the wings. Miles in the tech booth gave a thumbs up, a slight upturn of his lips. I nodded back gently. In the hallway afterwards, my mum found me. Her eyes were bright, but she said nothing about the song. "Are you okay?" She asked, her hand lightly touching my shoulder. I nodded. "I'm okay, Mum." And this time I truly was. Callista didn't approach. I heard her in the distance, laughing with her friends, talking about how she'd saved the show with her act. I didn't care. She could have the spotlight. I had something else, something that didn't need lights or microphones to exist. When I got home, I opened my songbook one last time that night. I wrote, "They thought I'd fail, but I sang." And that was my victory. I closed the book, placing it next to my mum's stack of cassettes. Then I lay down the streetlights filtering through my curtains, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming of laughter. I looked at her for a moment, then said softly, "You taught me how to stand still when people try to make you fall." My voice wasn't sharp, wasn't bitter, just clear. Callista blinked, her smile faltered, as if she wasn't sure if I'd complimented her or challenged her. I didn't wait for her to reply. I walked past, shoulders straight, songbook tucked under my arm, and for the first time all day, I felt like the floor wasn't trying to swallow me whole. That afternoon, I stayed late at school, not for practice, but because I needed the space. The choir room was empty, the light from the high windows casting shimmering dust motes. I sat by the old piano, not touching the keys, just resting my hands on the chipped wood. I opened my songbook and wrote, "They thought they took my voice, but they only made it louder." I wasn't sure I fully believed that, but writing it down made it feel truer. When I left, the hallways were quiet, just the hum of the air conditioning. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to see the video Lainey posted. I had felt the shift like the air before a storm when everything becomes sharp and still. The night of the show arrived sooner than I expected. The auditorium was bright with stage lights, the scent of cheap perfume and floor cleaner mixing in the air. The seats were full, the murmur of parents, students, and teachers blending into a wave. I stood backstage, no sequined dress, no glittery makeup. Just my mum's hoodie jeans and old sneakers. My songbook was in my back pocket, the corner of the paper peeking out like a reminder. I didn't have a microphone. I told Miles I didn't want one, not because I was afraid it would break again, but because I wanted my voice to stand on its own, unfiltered, unamplified, just me. Callista and her group performed before me my song Now Theirs with electronic beats and flashing lights. The crowd applauded, a few standing. She brushed past me as she walked off, sweat glittering on her forehead, her smile radiant. "Good luck, little sister," she said, her voice sweet but sharp like a knife. I didn't answer. I just gave a slight nod and walked out onto the stage when they called my name. Callin Godsey Solo Scarborough Fair. The lights were blinding, but I didn't squint. I stood center stage, hands empty, breath steady. The crowd was silent, but I could feel the anticipation, the curiosity, and the smirks waiting for me to stumble. I took a breath deep and began. "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" My voice was small, not powerful, but clear, like my mother's used to be in our tiny kitchen. No background music, no effects, just me and the words that had lived inside me for so long. The first row was silent. Then the second. I didn't look at anyone, didn't search for Callista or my mum in the crowd. I just sang each note like a stone laid down, building something no one could take away. When I finished, there was no immediate applause. There was a pause, as if the auditorium was holding its breath with me. Then from somewhere in the back, a ripple of clapping began slowly, then spreading. Not thunderous, not wild, but enough. I didn't bow. I didn't smile. I just walked off stage, my sneakers squeaking on the wood floor, and disappeared behind the wings. Miles in the tech booth gave a thumbs up, a slight upturn of his lips. I nodded back gently. In the hallway afterwards, my mum found me. Her eyes were bright, but she said nothing about the song. "Are you okay?" she asked, her hand lightly touching my shoulder. I nodded. "I'm okay, Mum." And this time I truly was. Callista didn't approach. I heard her in the distance laughing with her friends, talking about how she'd saved the show with her act. I didn't care. She could have the spotlight. I had something else, something that didn't need lights or microphones to exist. When I got home, I opened my songbook one last time that night. I wrote "They Thought I'd Fail, but I sang," and that was my victory. I closed the book, placing it next to my mum's stack of cassettes. Then I lay down the streetlights filtering through my curtains, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming of laughter.